Everybody, welcome to Coffee with John. Looking forward to talking with CEO Richard White of Fathom, Fathom AI. So I want to just go, if somebody goes to your website and they go to Fathom AI, they're going to see something that says, take your productivity to new heights. Fathom is the AI note taker and meeting partner that captures what matters, connects you with your favorite tools, and scales with your team. From lightning fast, super accurate AI meeting summaries to seamless integrations, we handle the details so you can focus on the conversations and move forward with confidence. All right, I want to dive in.
Okay.
I'm a business coach. I've been to a lot of meetings. Before this, I've had my own company as well and worked for other companies. And meetings, it's amazing how many meetings people leave with no action item. Nothing really specific and measurable gets talked about. The person who's leading the meeting doesn't facilitate it to or have the confidence or courage to ask everybody what their takeaways and their action plans are. This is a gap. I don't think anybody saw that gap being healed with AI, but AI is a really, really great solution for this. And so I kind of want to dive in and just start with how people prep, knowing that this is a tool that will be no different than an executive assistant at the meeting. And so just take us back to the mindset of creating the agenda and prepping for the meeting, knowing that it does many other things, but that this is a tool that will also be at the table. Just because it maybe sits at the center of the table, which isn't the typical place people sit, it's still at the table, and it's no different, maybe even the most valuable person at the table. Just kind of walk us through that, Richard.
Sure. One of my personal goals here is to make meetings great. I think meetings should be great, right? The right meeting with the right people, the right agenda
Right.
is really powerful, right? And it's primary way we communicate in any organization. Most meetings aren't great, right? Most people don't like meetings. It's a very negative connotation. And, I think one of the reasons is it's challenging enough to run a meeting, but to run a good meeting and also be kind of a stenographer, scribe at the same time is really hard, right? Historically, even the best meetings generally had a dedicated, hey, this person's going to take the notes, right? So that the other person can lead and facilitate. And I started this company because I found myself on a lot of meetings where I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm hearing lots of interesting things. I'm on customer calls, I'm on prospect calls, I'm meeting with my internal team. I'm hearing really important nuggets of wisdom. And either I need to remember that or I need to share that with someone else in my org. And I'm like frantically trying to write down what they said exactly. And so much gets lost in that game of telephone, right? And so we said, gosh, can't we use technology to solve this? Can't we just have the meeting and something is there, just kind of capturing the whole meeting, capturing the notes? And so we kind of started Fathom well before AI actually existed. Actually, one of our core hypotheses was AI would eventually get here. And so we started off with we're just going to record the meeting and transcribe it. But we always had a vision to, at some point, the AI could write better notes than we do. It could take better action items than we do because it doesn't ever lose focus, right? It's not going to zone out. It's going to be very present. It's going to be very neutral. And so that'll really open us up to solve, I think, one of the problems of meetings, right? And we can talk more about what the other problems are, but one of them is just try to facilitate and scribe at the same time is really, really hard. And so now with Fathom, you don't have to. You can just show up and have the meeting. You can focus on, setting a good agenda. You can focus on following the conversation wherever it goes. You've got this thing backing up saying, hey, you missed these parts, or hey, here's the update so far.
So let's talk about what somebody who's listening to this may say. That's intrusive. That feels like I'm being spied on. It's almost too much. How do you reply to that?
Try it. I mean, I've met a lot of folks that I've met folks that are very feel very strongly about their notes. It's actually the number one pushback I get, right? Hey, I take great notes. No one knows how to take notes. Like I take them, like they're very specific to me, and I'm used to having that level of control. And usually what we find is after 3 to 5 sessions, they're like, actually, this is great. And I think it's because it changes how you work. I actually think notes, I always tell my team, one of our top things our product delivers is AI generated notes, but I actually think no one wants notes, right? Like notes, I can tell our team, us generating notes is like Netflix sending DVDs. It's what we did in an interim period to get to what we wanted to. What you really want is to remember what happened in the meeting.
Right.
And what better way to remember what's happening in the meeting than to have the entire log of that meeting that you can search via AI at any time, right? When you asked about prepping for a meeting before, the way I prep for a meeting is completely different now. I don't, I don't read my notes afterwards after the meeting. When I go into have a follow-up conversation with someone, I go back and ask Fathom, hey, when was the last time I spoke with John? What were the things we let off? Like, where did we leave off? What things were left unsaid? What things were left undone? I go look at the notes. I listen to, 3 to 5 30-second clips out of that meeting, jogs my memory, and I jump into that meeting as if we just got off the last one, even if it was a year ago. And I think that level of recall is really important. But to the person that says like, hey, this is too intrusive, whatnot, I totally get that. I think it's historically, we've had call recording for a while, but there wasn't a lot of value for doing it. It's like, oh, we got this recording. It's kind of like my parents growing up recorded, put the camera in the corner for every Christmas and record like 8 hours of content. We never looked at it again, right? And that's how I feel like the original call recording was, because who wants to rewatch a 30-minute meeting, right? No one, right? But now we're in this era, like if you are okay with the thing capturing, and by the way, we have all sorts of modes. It can capture the full audio video. It can capture just the audio. It can capture just the transcript. So maybe you don't like the way you looked at the day. You don't need the video necessarily, right? Sometimes it's good for the screen share, but you get a lot of value for basically having that record of the meeting, right? And sure, sometimes maybe you have a sensitive topic, you want to go off the record, you want to say something, you can always hit pause, like you're in full control. And so I think giving people control, giving people a lot of ROI for agreeing to have this captured, and not just the person running the meeting, but people joining the meeting too, right? We see a lot of sales calls where Fathom is on the meeting, and the prospect wants the recording and the notes and everything else just as much as the salesperson does, right? Because they don't have perfect memory either. And so I think we tend to find that like those kind of objections about whether it's, I love taking notes, I'm really good at it, or hey, I don't know how I feel about being, recorded or transcribed, tend to melt away once you just give it a shot.
How does it work? So I'm sitting in a conference room. How does it work? What's the setup? How does it work?
So basically, say anytime you're on kind of like what we're doing right now, we're on a video call. It could be Zoom, it could be Google Meet, Teams, Slack huddles, you name it, anything on my desktop. Basically, historically, it worked by we'd send a bot to the meeting. And so they'd be like, well, bot meetings is very clear that there's something here scribing for you. More recently, actually, literally 2 weeks ago, we launched a version where you can choose not to have the bot in the meeting. Some people find that part intrusive and like, hey, we've got to this point where these things have become so popular. Sometimes there's as many bots as there are people in the meeting. And that kind of ruins the feel of like, no, this should feel like human connection. So we now have a version where there doesn't need to be a bot in the meeting. But basically, as you're using it, as I'm on, there'll be a running thing in the corner showing me the notes so far. I can type any notes. If there's something I really want to memorialize, I can type notes. And the AI, again, in the meeting will kind of work that into its notes.
Yeah.
So it's pretty, honestly, I think it's pretty out of the way. I think a lot of folks kind of refer back to it, but a lot of it, the kind of rolling summary as the meeting goes really just inspires confidence that it's working. And you just focus on having the conversation. At the end of the meeting, within about 30 seconds, you'll get the recording, you'll get the transcript, but more importantly, you'll get the notes. And actually the AI will do like update its notes after the meeting to kind of like make them make even more sense, give you all the action items. It can put those action items in Asana if you use that. It can put them in your CRM. It can fill in your CRM. So it can do all kind of like, also that like post-meeting data entry. And that's the other thing people hate about meetings, right? We get off the meeting, we've got a bunch of work to do. And so we're trying to solve that too by like, hey, let's do all the rote kind of like data entry stuff, but all the stuff right places. And my favorite part is we now have like almost like a ChatGPT interface into that meeting. So if I get off the meeting, I can ask a question like, hey, do we talk about this? Or can you draft me the follow-up email that makes sense with this? Or, hey, we discussed this spec we need to write. Can you give me an outline of that? So it's really kind of nice for like doing your post-meeting work.
And does this sit on the desktop and the phone?
It sits on the desktop. We're actually about to also launch a phone app. So if you have an in-person meeting, you'll be able to kind of drop it on a desk in front of you and it kind of work the same way.
And if you're at a meeting, who activates what? Like, does one person activate it for one person, for multiple people? Do multiple people get the notes? Like, how does it get activated once a meeting's about to begin?
Sure. Anyone on the meeting can basically use Fathom. And, obviously you have to follow whatever rules are in your jurisdiction about getting consent on that, right? We always recommend like, hey, let everyone know you're doing this. Usually we put some message into the chat channel. automatically, but we think it's good practice, good social practice. Be like, hey, do you mind if I capture notes with Fathom? And then that person who's capturing them, everyone in the meeting could have their own set of notes. Everyone could have their own Fathom capturing it. But generally what we see is one person's like, hey, I'm going to use Fathom. Great. Anyone want the notes after the meeting? And you can just click a button, and after the meeting, everyone will get the same notes, sort of thing. And so we typically see that as the most common behavior.
Yeah. You know, what's amazing to me, Richard, is cost of technology today. The cost of technology today. I mean, you know, somebody can, you know, come to your site and have a free option. They can pay $15 a month or $25 a month, depending. You know, what's the cost of one idea lost? What's the cost of 1 hour of lost productivity? What is the cost of somebody leaving a meeting and not knowing what to do? What is the cost of going to your next meeting and not being able to recall certain key things that you talked about that you thought you couldn't forget? I listened to a podcast. One of my favorite podcasts is Founders. I don't know if you listen to Founders with David Senra. It'll be your new favorite. It's David Senra, and then he's got another podcast called Founders. But he interviewed the CEO of Coinbase, Brian Armstrong. One of the things Brian was talking about in his interview was that the times we're in right now are made for people with learning disabilities, ADHD, dyslexia, you know, yada, yada, yada. And what's amazing is a lot of times those people have, you know, I'm dyslexic, I can speak to this, you know, it's a little bit more difficult times to retrieve something in real time when you need it. You need the trigger of something to like just remind you of something. And so a tool like this, which, you know, 10 years ago would have been outpriced for the masses, is now so affordable, yet people resist it. Why is that?
I mean, I think any behavior change is, you know, is always difficult. I mean, we've spent years from, you know, grade school on up taking notes. It's a very personal, it's one of the most tried and true skills we have as professionals, right? And so I think getting people to say, hey, that's not needed anymore, right? Or like, you know, we've got better ways to do this is a tough hump to get over. It's interesting you mentioned, you know, things like dyslexia and ADHD. We get a lot of messages from people with ADHD. They're like, this is a lifesaver, right? You know, I have a hard time maintaining focus, and now I'm not worried about missing that one thing. And, you know, I'll throw out a fun cost one for you too, which is what's the cost of a client misquoting you from a meeting? We get message all the time where it's like, oh, Fathom saved me $1,000 because I could go back to the tape and show the client we never said that what you think we said, right? You committed to this thing, you agreed to this thing, that sort of thing. But you know, for us, cost has always been really important. We from the day one built Fathom to be free, and actually, you mentioned some price points, but our free product you can use forever. There's no, you know, there's a lot of times like free is like this trap, and right, 15 days in, now you're kind of, there's like a gotcha moment, and now you kind of have to upgrade. We don't believe in that, right? We believe that we want everyone to have the benefit of a tool like this, and we've worked hard to drive the cost down. It's kind of been fun because when we got started, one of the core technologies behind this is transcription. When we started this company 5 years ago, transcription cost us $3 an hour, which roughly meant it cost us $50 per user per month to run this, and we were giving it away for free. And we made a big bet. What's that?
Why for free? You know, a lot of times they say, well, if it's free, you're the product. So how is it free? How is it free for everybody?
So the one really nice thing about this is, like, the thing I love about this business is that there's two clear value props. One is the person on the meeting. Hey, you don't need to take notes. We're going to lower your cortisol levels. You're going to be way less stressed. All the stuff we just talked about.
Yeah.
But the other value prop is people running teams that have teams, right? And I saw this at my last startup where I was running it, and I was running the sales team, and I was constantly asking, like, yeah, what did the customer actually say, right? I always wanted to double click in my team's notes and be like, if I could just hear that pricing discussion, if I could just hear that sales objection, man, would I have so much more clarity. And so what's really nice about this business is we can afford to give this away for free forever, really. One, because the cost of all this stuff has come down. The cost of AI has come down. The cost of transcription has come down 90%. But also because our business model isn't on making money off individuals. Our business model is, at some point, there's going to be a bunch of individuals at your company using Fathom and loving it. And then you, as a founder, manager, executive, are going to say, gosh, I also could use this for a different reason, which is I want to be able to double click into these
Yeah.
things, right? And so I can go to Fathom and ask the questions like, what competitors are trending up over the last 6 weeks? And it can list, you can look across all of my sales team's calls and stuff like that. And so we kind of monetize at that team workspace level, which allows us to kind of give the core product away for free to folks that are just wanting to take notes on meetings.
So let's talk about AI. You created this business?
2020.
2020 during COVID, what month?
Yep. Right in the middle of COVID, August. Yep.
So, a lot of time, I think a lot of people were thinking about, hey, making different, life decisions as far as their career during that time. And I actually heard an interesting stat yesterday from a guy that I interviewed that before COVID, there was 1,000 LLCs registered a day in the United States. I have to fact check this, but this is what he was telling me. After COVID and still today, 3,000 a day, LLCs registered. A lot of people thinking about wanting to start their own business, which is, by the way, Fathom should be part of every business, right? AI note-taking should be part of every business. So you start this business during COVID. Many would say, are you crazy? Many would say, brilliant. So why did you decide during that specific time?
I was already thinking about kind of, I've been running my previous company for about 10 years. And so I was already kind of thinking, hey, maybe what's next? Obviously, this problem becomes more acute during COVID when we're all on Zooms, right? And so it becomes, I think it kind of is a more obvious thing to work on. COVID was a great time to start a company. There was no social opportunity cost, right? Like it was like, well, kind of stuck at home anyways. I don't have the hardest part of something about starting a business, especially once you're not fresh out of college, right? Once you have, you're more into the middle of your careers, there's social obligations, family obligations, turns out all that stuff just went away very quickly. Travel obligations, all that stuff really melted away. And it's like, well, if there's ever a time to kind of hold yourself up in a cabin, I literally moved up to Tahoe and moved into a cabin and just went heads down for a year on a product that was there. Yeah. I think it was also kind of an interesting window. I mentioned at when we got started, transcription was really expensive and we bet on it going to zero. When we got started, AI wasn't very good. In fact, when we put AI in our product name in 2021, I had a bunch of our investors reach out and say, what are you doing? Don't do that. AI is terrible. And it's hard to remember this now, but there was this first wave of quote unquote AI products in the late 2010s that were terrible, right? They marketed themselves AI. They were not very good. And I remember telling our investors no, this wave of AI is not very good, but the next one is going to be great. Yeah. We're going to bet on that. And so I think, very fortunate, like everything in startup wise, right? It's important to have kind of directional accuracy in your hypotheses, and then you got to get lucky on timing, right? And we kind of got lucky that never was there a better time to start a startup. And then we got pretty lucky that transcription costs did come down just in time as we were scaling up usage, and AI showed up right when we needed to. So feel very fortunate that it's all worked out.
Yeah, there is an element of luck. When I graduated college, I started an internet company in June of '95 with my brother and a buddy. And so I'm not saying that we all weren't really smart, but we also had perfect timing, and we ultimately sold that company 2 years later. So it really was just the timing was great. It's amazing, real quickly, in the last, it feels like handful of months, we're airing this in May of 2026. In the last couple months, I feel like Claude and Claude Coworker, Claude Pro has really been changing the game, and it's been taking things to a new level. It seems to me, what I'm seeing as a business coach, a lot of companies opening up to Claude, where they used to have internal bots. Now they're trusting Claude. Coworker is taking productivity to a next level. Again, I think AI is a tool. It's not the ultimate end solution. But so my question to you is, from an AI perspective, you started with, added AI a year or so later. Fast forward, and this I think is a very difficult question, 3 years. What does AI look like?
It's funny, we talk about this a lot at board meetings. I get asked, where do you think AI is in 5 years? I'm I can barely tell you 18 months out.
In 6 months, right? 3 months out.
Yeah.
That's why I said, so that's kind of the answer I was hoping for. So now just take me through the end of the year, right? Take the listener to the end of the year.
I I think if you go back even 6 to 9 months, a lot of the conversations that were happening in my kind of network were, are we going to continue to see this kind of Moore's Law level kind of growth, exponential growth, or are we going to hit some kind of natural ceiling on what you can do with a large language model? And it was kind of torn 50-50. And I think, I remember last fall, GPT-5 came out, and GPT-5 was, I think by most perspectives, kind of a letdown. It wasn't the step function up that GPT-4 was to GPT-3. And so it kind of led a lot of credence to people like, or maybe we're plateauing, right? And so we're going to end up with, okay, this level of capability, it'll incrementally get better, but it's not exponentially get better. I agree with you, though. We're here in May, almost May 2026. In the last 3 to 4 months, it feels like it's reaccelerated again, right? And so you've seen kind of, GPT-5 may not have been the best launch, but the ones that came after that, 5.5 and Opus and all that sort of stuff. Wow, what the stuff you can do with that, the stuff that it's really opened up anyone to do. I know people that are just, AEs that are using Claude Code to build their own personal CRM so they can, do better than their colleagues, right? That's pretty amazing stuff. I think, I still think that debate is happening about, is a plateau right around the corner? Are we going to keep seeing this exponential growth? Are we going to see AGI in a year? Are we going to see AGI in 10 years? And I think it's really hard to predict. I think one of the big things you're going to see is almost bifurcation in cost. So for example, I think we're going to continue to see is the mainline public tools are going to keep becoming more expensive. For the first 2 years we were doing this, every year AI got 80% better and 80% cheaper at the same time. And it was mind blowing. The other trend starting about a year ago is that stopped happening. And now AI is getting 30% better and 60% more expensive. And so I think it's all today that like, Claude can compute just like, the price went up overnight, like 30% sort of thing. So I think one thing that's going to happen is there's going to be this explosion of use cases, but because there's like finite actual compute out there, you're also going to see explosion of cost. I think there'll be a flight to, there's a lot of these open source models that are getting really good. So I think if you're building a business and you're building internal tools as you should be on AI, you should be using platforms and think about flexibility of like, hey, I'm going to build this for today, but in a year, I might need to rebuild this on something else, right? And just know you're going to have to keep investing in that.
I think one thing is for sure, everybody's got to spend 5 minutes a day learning it and working at it and doing more. All right. 30-second speed round. Here we go. If you could have coffee with anybody, who would it be and why?
Living?
Yeah, living or dead.
Thomas Jefferson was my first answer, and there's Ben Franklin. Living, probably Bill Gates.
Yeah. All right. Book that made a big impact on you.
I'll do two. One is Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, which is actually more a philosophy book about what is quality and the intersection of quality. The other one is, this is a kind of a weird one. This woman, April Dunford, writes a really great book about product positioning, which actually turns out to be fantastically useful to anyone that's starting a business.
What's it called?
I'm blanking on it, but just look up April Dunford. You'll find her books.
Good. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
One investor once told me when I was early in my career as a CEO, that I need to be more dynamic. And I think what she meant by that is like, I need to be able to do more things at once. And I'll be honest, that like really irritated the crap out of me. And it to this day, it eats at me. It's a chip on my shoulder, but it's kept me being very dynamic, like never staying too still, never getting too stuck in a plan.
All right, good. Tell everybody where they can connect with you and buy Fathom.
Yeah, if you can find Fathom, you don't have to buy it. Use it for free. Fathom.ai, download on your desktop. You can be up and running in a few minutes, and you can find me on LinkedIn, Richard White.
Great. Coffee community, formerly Think Business. If you're running a business, you need to learn how to use AI. You need to lead meetings with action items. Fathom is a great solution. It's that simple. Richard, I appreciate you being on the show. You can get Fathom at fathom.ai. Richard, I want to have you back so we can talk for more AI maybe in a few months. And you can reach me at johndwaskin.com. Richard, thanks. This was awesome.
Thanks for having me.